The Kogan Fontaine playing cards. One side has Fontaine add copy, and the other's the same. The top says Fontaine, and the bottom is a bit about the deck. The back is kind of the back design, but I'll get into more of that in a second. The inside tuck flap says Kogan. The inside tuck flaps keep going with the rest of the tuck box, and the inside of the tuck box is blank. Now, one thing lastly to note is that it is a textured tuck box, so all of these individual lines here are actually textured on and is both embossed and debossed. So exquisite tuck box. Let's take a look at the cards. Now, the first thing to note before I show you all of them individually is that when you riffle through, you get a really cool design. But when you get about halfway through, you will actually see that it says the name of the deck, Kogan, right there. So you can actually check that out. And it says Kogan just right like that. So super cool that they actually were able to pull this off, and each card is individually going to be different. But the standard back design is still pretty cool. I do still think that the F's rotating is still kind of simplistic and lame, but the way that they did the background with the bricks and all of the detail coming off of it actually makes this a Fontaine deck possibly worth purchasing. Next, we have the number cards with a redesigned both pips, indices, and values, although the placement is going to be the same for all of your number cards, except they're going to be a little bit closer right here on the 9, but that's pretty much all I can say for that. And then here's the redesign for your diamonds. Another thing is that the values are going to be closer up in this top corner than what most values would be, and they are a little bit smaller than a standard deck of cards. But again, super simple. Like it a lot. You get duplicate Kogan Jokers. Your court cards are quite interesting. Truth be told, I don't even know how to describe them. Clearly, each suit is going to have its own theme. But honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of them. I think that the design work is, like, the artwork is cool. But when it comes to the actual designs themselves, I think they're a failure just because of the fact that it's a little bit crude for my taste. And you get your 3 aces, each with a different design on it. You get your 2 ad cards, and lastly, your ace of spades, which for a back design so cool was quite disappointing. When it comes to how this deck handles, from bottom to top, it pharaohs perfectly every other. Wasn't exactly the easiest deck, but that's just because I have not broken it in yet. And then from top to bottom is going to be perfectly every other once again. No problems with the pharaoh. Next is what this deck is going to feel like in your hand. So when it comes to the thickness of this deck, it is going to be a little bit thicker. It is going to be on the more premium stock of the 2 stocks that Bicycle has. They have Classic and Premium. It is the thicker of the 2, and then it's going to be crushed is what it feels like. So it doesn't feel just like a standard premium. It feels like it is a little bit thinner and a little bit more buttery, which again is what I'm going to next, which is how the deck actually feels in your hands, not just the stock of it. So you have more snappy decks and more buttery decks, and then really stiff decks that you can't move. This one, it definitely is going to lean a little bit more toward buttery, which is better for things like under pressure. Now, that does not mean it cannot be used for things like backdrop, but still really good all-around feel. I did get this deck from SoCal Playing Cards, and this is not sponsored by them, but the things that I did receive with it is 1, a plastic card sleeve, a SoCal Playing Cards sticker, a SoCal Playing Cards playing card, which is the King of Clubs, and a thank you note from Henry. Although this is the first time for me getting something from SoCal Playing Cards, I would highly recommend it. But if you're wondering on if you should buy this deck, let me help you out real quick. If you're a magician, I'm not picking this deck up simply for the fact that the back design doesn't help you at all. The faces are overly customized and doesn't do anything for you whatsoever. If you're a cardist, I'd pick this deck up probably just because of the hype with Fontaine decks. And the back design actually is pretty cool for cardistry. The faces honestly are not, but if you're just relying on the back design, I'd pick this up for cardistry. If you're a collector, I'd probably pick this deck up. 1, Fontaine just has a really big audience and produces playing cards all the stinking time, which not big of a fan of, but I'll get into that more in a second. But to be told, if you're a collector, you'd be dumb not to pick up this deck. From the tuck box being really cool and having all this texture and embossing and debossing to it look really cool on a shelf like that, and there really aren't very many decks that when you riffle through do something like that. So the only one I can now think of that is in my collection are the Orbit V8s, and I will leave that review in the description. Should you play card games with it? Definitely not. And this is a hype deck? Quite possibly. Now, I would say for this specific deck of Fontaines, I'm going to say no, tentatively. When it comes to Fontaine in general, without question, Fontaines are a hype brand. They built all of their playing cards on just changing the color and made like 25 different decks. It's unbelievable. Now, the last ones I got, I do have the green ones, and that's just because I got them for Christmas the one year. And these I got actually from Rare Playing Cards. So this is actually sponsored by them. Now, they didn't actually know it was sponsored by them because they just sent it to me as a gift. But truth be told, I just really like them a lot. So I'm going to say it's a sponsored video because, truth be told, Rare Playing Cards is pretty awesome for that. So, Rare Playing Cards, I'd check them out in the description and get everything there for 10% off using code cardperfectmagician. But with this being a hype brand, I'm not a big fan of Fontaine's. I'm really not. I don't like the way they do business. I don't like really a lot of things, with the fact that the one guy who owns and oversees the thing said like F cops in one of his Instagram stories when all the riots and stuff were going out in mid-2020. So I'm not a big fan of Fontaine's in general, but I do appreciate the back design in the tuck box. The faces I'm not a fan of whatsoever when it comes to especially just how crude it is, with like the way that it shows off the court cards and their bodies, and then the language on a couple of those ad cards. I'm just like, not a fan of those. So would I buy this deck if I were just spending my own money? Probably not, honestly. I probably wouldn't, just because I don't like those things. But, you know, if you're okay with those, then, you know what, go for it. But I do appreciate the things that Fontaine has done in the more recent year, with the fact that it's taken even like their Halloween deck and put in a screen in it. And they've been extremely innovative and kind of tried to transform themselves from a hype brand to a brand that's actually worth something. And I think they've done a pretty good job so far. I do know that in the near future, Rare Playing Cards will be dropping these, and they'll have about 6 decks, as far as I know, that will be dropping on their website. But in the time being, I don't know what to tell you. Have fun finding them, I guess. But again, if you want to check them out, I'll leave it in the description below. And if you like playing card reviews, this is kind of the channel for you because I've posted over 150. So I check out the Orbit V8 reviews, which I talked about a little bit earlier right here, and the deck reviews playlist right here. Plus, if you want some behind the scenes stuff and want to be able to vote on what decks I review and the other things I put here on the channel, I check out Patreon, which will be linked in the description below. Catch you guys in the next one. Make sure to subscribe. This is Card Perfect, signing off.